Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, Anita Finley.
We have our celebrated guest today, Dean Webb, who is Executive Director of Faith Farm Ministries. And I must tell our listeners, I know you've been listening to him for many years, but we had a who's who in South Florida. We chose 20 people who we felt, and our team felt, were really to be recognized. And there was Dean Webb. He was one of them. And then we said we would then announce who got the most votes. And I told Dean when he came into the studio that he actually got the most votes of anyone. And Yay! He was so excited. Was because people who know him think so much of him. And that's what it was. So I was excited. And thank you very much and for all that you do, Dean.
Thank you for even nominating me. I'm a little bit surprised about winning, but anyway,
it was a lot of people from Faith Farm and I think some others. So let's talk though about, since you came to Faith Farm, I know that you have created a lot of programs, but I think the one that's probably the most important is why other rescue missions come to see what you've done, and you can tell it better than I, but it is because you've made this into an industry rather than just a charity. Is that true?
Well, we use industry to support the charity. I mean, our hearts are in the charity.
That was well said.
We utilize the industry to fund it. So we're not always doing fundraising dinners. We're working side by side with our ex-addicts and addicted people to work with them in jobs, and that job provides revenue, which makes it free for them and pays all the bills.
And we've talked about that because you do unusual things for a lot of people who've wound up in, I use the word prison, let's just say into places that they're locked up because, and not for serious violations, but not maybe because they've been caught on the street, drinking too much or something over and over and over, or prostitutes. And you have a great relationship with some of the judges because they know people shouldn't keep going into jail. It's not going to do them any good, and they love what Faith Farm does, right? So that's kind of something special that you do.
Oh, yeah. I think I mentioned before, I think we have about 17 judges in Palm Beach and Broward County that I use the term sentence people to Faith Farm, but we're faith-based, so that's not politically correct in our environment. So they can't sentence anybody, but they give them the option on going to Faith Farm to try and get clean and recover in lieu of incarceration. And considering jail or prison time, a lot of them will choose Faith Farm. Now, when they get there, they find out they got to get up every morning at 6 and get their breakfast and go to class and go to a work project. And we have a long day.
But no one's going to hurt them there either as compared to
nobody's going to hurt them. Actually, they're going to be totally cocooned in love by people that have graduated from that program. Not all of them, 60% or so. And are really they're load-bearing for them at a lesser salary. Most of our people make less money than what we spend on the student to recover. Honestly, even though we provide housing for our administrative staff on site, except for the pastors and the directors, I don't have any staff members that make the $3,000 a month that we pay. It costs us per student, per man per month, per woman per month. And so these people are not there for the money. They're there for the love, and they're there to help facilitate the change, the life change that they get to see.
Yeah, well, that's what makes Faith Farm well known. And when we first started, I think people used to say, oh, well, that's a thrift shop. But I think they know differently now. I know we've been doing a lot to help, and I know the magazine, but you've been out in the community speaking so much, and that's the amazing part of Faith Farm, that it is almost multi-dimensional. That's really what it is.
It is. I mean, it's really a real depth, not only to our instruction and the program, but just to all the micro business enterprises that we use to fund it. I mean, for give you an example, I was up in Okeechobee last Tuesday morning at 7:45. I love that. I have to get up at quarter 5.
Okeechobee is not quite. It's
north of Lake Okeechobee, so it's about 12 miles outside the town of Okeechobee, but it's about the same number of miles north of Okeechobee.
Okay, so that's a big trip, but that's an interesting thing that you have one so spread so far north compared to the one you have down in the south.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's 45 minutes. Our headquarters are on the Boynton Beach, Palm Beach County campus, on that 90-acre campus, and then it takes me about 45 minutes to get down to Lauderdale to our first farm, that 13-acre site, and it takes me about an hour and 15 minutes to get north to Okeechobee. So it's an extra 30 minutes when I go up to that location, that campus. But I was up there Tuesday inspecting our blueberry. We had a guy in Fort Lauderdale who decided he was going to quit his job and make a living on blueberries. That's what he wanted to do. So he bought 15 acres up in Okeechobee, and he'd already planted 7 of them. And then he started studying, and you can go on YouTube and look at this, the gentle way that you have to slowly fondle the stems to get the right blueberries to fall in your tray. It's a very gentle process, but it's very labor intensive. He started calculating how long to do it. He goes, "Oh my God, I'm never going to make any money at this." So he calls our Okeechobee farm and says, "Look, I put in 7 acres of blueberries, and I'm about to bulldoze them over and resell my land. I'm not going to quit my job in Fort Lauderdale. I'm going to go stay at my job and stay at work. Do you, by any chance, want those blueberries?" And Alan, the director, called me, and I said, "Absolutely, we'll do that." So he says, "Well, I don't know anything about growing blueberries." And I said, "Well, I don't either, but we can find out. We can get the University of Florida, the state and county extension office. We will get help. Tell him, yes, we'll take them. But we got to find out how to transplant them and get them over there." So we've had 30 guys in our program for several weeks now. We prepared the ground. We got permits to run a 10-inch pipe, almost 3/4 of a mile from one of our lakes down to there's a huge tank-looking thing that's a filter system that it comes out of the ground, runs through the filter system, back down into the feeder systems that sprinkle for the blueberries. They have a drip line system. And the guy said, "If you'll dig them up," he said, "I put in drip line systems and everything for all the rows of blueberries. You can have those, but you got to dig them up." So we've been digging up lines, carefully loading them in one of our trucks, bringing them over, laying it out, and laying those drip lines out, then taking burlap bags, putting the root system of each plant in a burlap, soaking it so it'll keep it wet. And then we transport it over and gently plant it. And we now have about 6 acres of those planted right in the middle of the U-shaped housing district there where the houses are for the staff. We've got mounds of pine bark because you have to they do a test of the soil, and based on how it tests, that's how many inches deep of pine bark you have to put for the rains of the sun for the acid to drop into the soil and the acidic soil to make it just right for the blueberries. We had to sprinkle little granules of sulfur granules along the thing because it didn't have enough sulfur in the soil. So we have been learning as we go. The University of Florida has helped us, the county extension agency, and one of our board members, his grandfather used to grow blueberries years ago. He's in his 80s now, but way back he used to. So we got advice. So we take advice from everybody. And because we're a nonprofit and we help people, a lot of people are pretty willing to pitch in and give us, whatever help they can. So like next year, we will not, because of the shock of transplant, we don't really expect to get much, if anything. But then the second year, we should get a pretty good crop. And the third year, they estimate it'll bring in about 100,000.
Oh my goodness! And blueberries are the healthiest fruit you can eat.
Oh yeah, they're great. Now we've got a lot to learn. You know what my biggest scare is?
I have no idea.
We got these big burly ex-cons in our program, and I'm going to trust them to take their little hands and gently fondle those little stems to make the blueberries fall in the basket that's strapped around their neck.
Okay, wait a minute. You told me about that young man up there on the farm that was also big and heavy, he loved the animals, so they do. Maybe that's what they need.
Yeah, that probably is. It's actually, we found that it's very therapeutic. It really is. And Evan that guy's name. It was he was big, 6'6", bald-headed. he was Jewish, but they billed him as an Italian wrestler. When he was in Madison Square Garden, they gave him some Italian name or something, and he won a lot of stuff. He was also the guy that practiced law for 12 years in New York without any license or education. So we get so I don't want to tell his last name. I don't want to give him trouble, but he came out. So I'm not going to mess with those little baby cows, because we take dairy bulls that are 1 to 3 years old. Hours old, because they kill them. Normally, the dairy business does, because they need milkers, they need females, and when they get a male, they've got their own breeding stock for bulls, so they're useless to them. So we take those little babies, and they have no immune system. We tether them separately, and we wash them and bottle feed them, and then we have graduated pastures. Like we were up there at graduation Sunday, and I made a mistake with my wife Cindy. We drove back to. I said, "Let me just show you." And so she sees this netting about 5 feet off the ground
to get out,
to keep the sun, and she sees these little each pasture is graduated, and the feeding troughs are real low. They're less than a foot high. Then then they get a little bit 18 inches, and then 24 inches, because as the little calves grow, they have to be able to feed at a higher level. So she's looking at all these graduated troughs, and so we're right up there. We're not from here to that wall, about 5 feet away, and these cute little faces are eating and looking. She goes, "Oh my God!
You have to stop. I have to see them."
She said, "I got to roll the window." "Oh, you little baby!" I'm going. That must have been what happened. She wanted to take it home too.
I'm sure.
Absolutely, must have been what happened to some of the guys up there, because Evan said, "Oh, I don't mess with that little cow," But they said, "Well, yeah, that's what you're assigned to do." But the feeling of taking care of this helpless little calf, a couple days old, and nurturing them to health, bottle feeding, wash them, cleaning, all this stuff, putting his mind on caring for something else versus just the selfishness of him and his drugs and alcohol, it totally changed his life. I mean, he comes to graduation still, and his life is totally transformed. He's really a neat guy. But it's very therapeutic, and I'm hoping that the same thing happens just like you said with the blueberries. I don't know. They're a little more inanimate than the little baby calves, but every process that we use, sometimes we have a really pleasant byproduct of what we try to do in the microbusiness enterprise industry, but it's just it's really neat. It's really cool.
I am very excited about this. Let me give some advertising information, because we want people to donate. We want people to go to the thrift shop. We want you to call them to pick up things, but we want you to donate if you can. The holidays are coming up, and they sure could use it. So let me tell you, go to their website. That's the most important thing. If you go to faithfarm.org, you will see a lot of what they do. You'll also see Dean Webb. He certainly is on a lot of the YouTubes there. And the most important thing, though, that's happening, I want to talk about this Saturday, besides you're getting this award, is you're going to have an auto auction.
Right. We have donated automobiles over the period of the year. We accumulate them. And, I mean, we get everything: boats, motors, trailers, cars, SUVs. We actually have an ambulance back there.
Really?
Somebody donated. Water ski-doos, boats, motors. I mean, we just get everything. So we have a massive auction. We let everybody inspect the vehicles at 8 a.m., and then at 9 o'clock the auction starts until they're gone. It usually lasts till about noon, sometimes a little longer, depending on the number. And they're all sold as is. We're very clear. I mean, we don't guarantee or warrant anything, because we don't have any control over what's donated to us. We just sell that and use that money to fund the program.
But you clean up a lot of the things. I've seen it before.
Yeah.
I've seen some of the cars, and they're beauties.
Well, actually, we actually have a body shop. If there are minor dings or dents, we can knock those out, and we can match 1,100 paint colors going back 10 years. And so sometimes we'll paint or touch paint the car. We'll try to make them look nice, but we're real clear that we don't warrant anything about them. And our mechanic, we have a garage that maintains about 90 vehicles for the farm. Our big trucks, our donated cars that, like I'm driving a donated car as a staff member, because we don't buy anything. But he looks over and he'll generally say, "I've checked the car out. It's running well, or it's got these problems or that problems that I can recognize. May have more problems, but this is what I know." And we're trying to be really open about it, but on what we know. We don't know everything, but and usually people that have really, really nice cars running well don't think about giving them away. I mean, so there's usually somebody who's had car trouble or something frustrating that have them do it. But that's not always true. We got a gorgeous 2-seater Mercedes 2 years ago. A lady went to go buy a new Mercedes and trade in. They were only going to give her $1,000. And she got so mad. She said, "You're not going to take me to the cleaner." She donated to us and just bought a new one.
And what did you make on it? Do you remember?
We saw it was blue. It was Blue Book for about $15,500.
It was Blue Book for $15,500, and they were going to give her $1,000.
Yeah, and we got I think we got $8,500 at auction.
Now that's a wonderful woman. That was great.
Yeah, I was out of town that day. That was.
Or you would have asked for it.
I would have brought that. I used to have a 2-seater Mercedes that I just loved.
So you would have said, "Okay, that's mine. I'm paying for it."
I would have probably outbid everybody. I would have been suckered into it. I love little convertible.
And was
Mercedes.
it red?
Actually, it was.
I figured it would be red.
Yeah, it was.
It was red.
Now that you mention
it's a great idea that you have this, and it's coming up Saturday. When does it start? At 9?
Yeah, well, you can inspect all the vehicles. They're all out there at 8 o'clock, and then they usually start the bidding at 9.
Okay, so this is a great thing for you. Now, Faith Farm, this is the one over there on Boynton Beach Boulevard. So you take, it's really on 441, and you take Boynton Beach Boulevard. You go just a little bit north, and you'll see the great campus. But you can go into their thrift shop. They have so many things. They have new furniture, old furniture. They have so much that don't buy things. First go there and see if you can get it. And it changes all the time. We know that. But Faith Farm is a real important charity here.
We're I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but on Thursday we intend to hire a lady we've been interviewing, and she was a single mom. She's very skilled, and she doesn't know yet that we're going to hire her, but
no one knows who she is. It's okay.
Okay, so anyway, she when she came to us, she said, we said, "Well, so why do you want to work at Faith Farm?" She said, "Well, I want to work in a Christian environment. I want to work around wonderful people. I'm with a temp agency now, with working for a county, which is, I understand, doesn't have enough money, so they're going to lay her off anyway." So she's been looking. But anyway, when we asked her why she wanted to come, she said, "Well, first of all, I love the atmosphere. I love your mission statement, what you do." She says, "But as a single mom, you actually saved my life financially." She said, "I didn't have any money, and I would drive out to Faith Farm, and I needed maybe a little chair for my daughter, a small chair, and or just something, and I needed maybe some bedding or a pillow, or I needed clothes to go to work." She said, "And I might have to make multiple trips till I found what I wanted." She says, "But I was able," she said, "for 20 years, I've survived buying stuff inexpensively at Faith Farm." She says, "So I have a vested interest. I love this place." She said,
She
said, "If I could work here," she said, I would do it. But
and do you have a lot of people from the outside working there?
Yeah, about 40% of our staff, about 60% have come through the program, eventually been hired. We don't hire them immediately. The board usually requires them to go off for at least a year, make sure they can stay clean and sober. Because when you're in our environment, we have zero tolerance. It's real easy to stay clean because we don't let you do it otherwise. But when you're out with all the temptations and you can still stay clean and don't fall, then we feel pretty comfortable bringing you back that you're going to help other people. And so we don't usually hire people. We've made one exception in the women's program recently. This gal is just brilliant, and she's working out wonderful. But that's just a general rule.
Mm-hmm. And so this woman it's kind of a payback. It's like, it's really
kind of like, if she said, "If I could work here, you guys have just kept me going for 20 years as a single mom and everything." Can I tell you another story?
You have time.
I stopped at a Wendy's up on Lake Worth Avenue the other day, and I was hungry and I didn't have time, but I stopped and just got one of their small chilies, and I was sitting there eating it. And an older couple, the guy was obviously 80s, and the woman probably high 70s. He was walking with a cane, and you could tell the way they were dressed, they didn't have much money. And but they got a little baked potato and a small salad, and he was scraping the salad on her, and she was cutting the potato, and they were sharing it. And he had a whole bunch of those sour creams thing. He was
eating the sour cream
and stuff. You could tell that they.
Right.
So anyway, she started to eat her salad. She looked over and she said, "Honey, there's a guy from Faith Farm." I had my shirt on, a Faith Farm shirt logo. And so she said, "You're from Faith Farm?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "You work there?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She says, I love this place. She says, "Our daughter is in her 40s, and she's very addicted, and she's in a recovery program. She's not in yours. She's in one locally. And we're trying to keep her 2 small children. And at our age, my husband's in his 80s, and I'm in his 70s." And she said, "It's very difficult, but we're doing that in hope." She says, "We have used all of our savings." She had a problem legally, and she said, "We spent over $250,000, spent everything, every bit of our retirement to keep her out of prison if she would go to recovery and get off drugs." So she agreed to do that. And she said, we're actually really broke." She said, "But let me just tell you, we come to Faith Farm because that's the only place we can afford to shop." She said, "We can always find some little trinket for our grandchild or something." And she said, and we just, it's a blessing to us because that's the only way we can afford to shop.
That's a great story,
for our kids.
Dean.
So
this is quite
so
a
anyway,
story.
I thanked her
Whoa.
so much. So I went out to the car, and something inspired. God said, "Go give them a book." So I got a book, one of my U-turn books out, and I went back and where they're eating, and I leaned down and I said, "Since you shop at Faith Farm and have for years," I said, I wrote a book that's got 50 graduation speeches in them of lives turned around, and I handed her the book, and I'm telling you, Anita, she grabbed that book and held it to her chest and started crying. She said, "Every time I'm in the store, I want to buy that book, but
she's seen the book?
She said, "I just can't afford it."
This is too much.
She said, "I just can't afford it."
This is too much. You're telling me that she has seen the book, and now, out of the goodness of your heart, did that?
Yeah.
I can't
anyway,
believe this story.
she turned to
Dean.
her husband. She said, "George, you got a pen? We got to have him sign the book." She said,
Oh.
"I mean, he's got to sign. You got to sign the book." And so it took about 3 pens for him to find one that would write. I'd start to write and it'd fade out. So anyway, I finally signed the book for him. But it was such a
Dean,
such a divine encounter to
Yes, it
have
was.
somebody
Yes,
just
it was.
so appreciative.
I mean, why you were even there at that time, and why you happened to start talking to them because they saw your shirt, and then how she explained about her daughter. Now these people are penniless because they're paying for the daughter. I wish they had found you first, then they wouldn't have been penniless.
Yeah.
But that's a good point, isn't it? A lot of people do.
Yeah,
the parents.
I don't know where she's going, what recovery, but one thing I know is our price is right. Free is good because a good price. So I don't know if the girl didn't want to have the faith-based thing to it, because there are people we have some people that they're absolute atheists. They say, "I couldn't live under that for 9 months," talking about God and all this stuff. So it's not for everybody. It should be. I mean, I'd love to give everybody God.
Yes. Well, but you also can't handle more than 400 people.
Yeah.
So you're very limited in a sense, and you always seem to have a waiting list, or you try very hard to choose the people who seem to be the most appropriate for you.
And we've got 445 beds, 25 women.
Now you have 445, so I'm up from 400. Are we changing this?
Yeah.
I think we have to change this.
Well,
we're going with the 400, huh?
But can I tell you something else exciting?
I love you. We didn't even know what we were going to talk about today. This is great. You have so much to talk
in
about.
Between our shows, so much happens. I can't always.
I know.
Driving down here to the radio, I tried to think of what I'm going to talk about. And but as I'm talking, things are coming back. Anyway, Monday morning at 9:00, Palm Beach County Commissioners, the Planning and Zoning Department that I've been working with is going to make a proposal to the commissioners to give a transmittal to the Capitol in Tallahassee to change our zoning to institutional zoning there at Boynton. I have been stymied. I've been fighting for 3.5 years.
I know you have.
To be able to add beds, to add a building, expand a building. I couldn't put a footprint of square footage, and I couldn't add beds.
Marvelous. And is there an institutional zoning now, or they're going to develop one called institutional?
No, well, the hospital next door has
institutional.
So, I mean...
did that lawyer that you found, did he help do this?
Actually, no. I've just been going to every county commissioner and meeting and speaking up, and zoning commission. I just, for 3.5 years, just kept the pressure on.
You have to bring them to one of the graduations and celebrate them if this goes through.
Yeah, I went to see the vice mayor of Palm Beach, and I gave her one of my books, and she kind of tossed it back, and she said, "We're not allowed to accept gifts." And I said, "Well, then why don't you take it and give it to somebody to give them hope that there's a place here near you that they can get recovery. Then give it to somebody." And so I guess that was okay because she kept it then. But
Well, that's the greatest news. I mean, you've been sharing that with me, so I can't wait to tell Bill, and because that's really a wonderful thing.
We had a board meeting. We were till late last night, but anyway, at the end of the meeting, we stood around that long conference table, and we all joined hands and prayed that Monday morning that would go through.
Yeah, but now you have to. Is it going to go through in the Capitol?
Well, yeah. If the county commissioners give all the background on why they need to do it, because it's very frustrating if we tried. The thing is, it's going to open it wide. For example, I can do if I have more beds, I can create a landscaping company and have our guys get landscaping contracts. I can create if we need a chow hall because we can only seat a third of the people at a time. If I could get the funding, one of the problems we have is we pay all our bills. We're good if you check Dun and Bradstreet, we're on time, but that's all. We depend on donors somewhere to come out of the woodwork to donate to us so we can do the capital improvements we need, because everything's spent on the students. And, like we have over 600 applicants a year, and they have to have Bibles because it's a faith-based thing, and Bibles cost $29.95.
There's nobody who donates Bibles to you.
No, and we can get them now for half price because of volume, but we still, that's $13,000 a year for the Bible, so we make do with our bills. But I remember one time I was on the program here, and you, at the end of the thing, you said, you ought to think about putting Faith Farm in your will. And I thought, if I said that's really self-serving. But if Nita says it, that's great. And, when we were building our bridge, a man here in Boca evidently heard and changed his will and left $100,000.
I just was
towards
so
our bridge.
Thrilled if hopefully that came from this.
And we had no record of him at all. So that was totally from this program.
Well, I'm so thrilled. And we did it again, Dean, and you have a big Saturday. Congratulations again to you for your who's who, and have a great sale on your auto. And it was great seeing you. And we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, thank you for having me on.